Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Manova International. Today, we are recording this on the 28th of July, 2026, just to make sure that nothing happens in between as far as World War III is concerned or anything else that we are facing right now. And we are talking about a very important topic today with my beloved guest, Hakeem Anwar. We recently met in Mexico and afterwards even in Switzerland because you were traveling a bit. And we already had 2 interviews for Manova International because we did start a collaboration as far as the Above Phone is concerned. And Hakeem is the founder and the CEO of Above Phone that you can see on abovephone.com, where there is privacy-focused laptops and cell phones, smartphones. And today's topic is a different one, though, because I think it's very important and there is way more activity and opposition in the US in regards to data centers, AI data centers. There are different names for it, hyperscalers, gigascalers, whatnot. So we're going to clarify that question. Hakeem has done and released a huge report, an AI data center report, about 270 pages. It's a huge body of work, and it goes along with a data center map that basically maps all the information as far as US data centers are concerned. And I think we do need to be more aware over here in Europe, in the German-speaking region of Europe, especially because after the US and UK being on number 2, Germany is actually on number 3 on the list as far as the number of data centers is concerned worldwide, even before China. And they are running a technocracy. So we should be aware of that topic and in comparison to the US also start to actually form an opposition and make sure that there is not only awareness, but also activity. So with that rather long intro, welcome, Hakeem.
Guten Nachmittag, Tom, and everyone watching. It's good to be back with you, brother.
Let's start off with the obvious question. How and why did you create that data center report, and how did it turn out to have 270 or so pages? It's it's more like a book, actually.
I wish I knew. It's one of those questions that when I get sent down a rabbit hole, which in our case, our customers asked us to build an AI product, and I just want to know, okay, what's all involved in it if we try to do it all in-house, because that's what our company specializes in, not relying on third parties, but doing everything ourselves. And this was, halfway late 2025, and a lot of these stories were popping up around the time of these massive data centers building in, and a lot of vocal opposition. So I decided, okay, I would like to know more. I'd like to know how much water these things are using, how much power these things are using, and whether they're violating environmental laws, because it definitely felt it like the time. So I just wanted to answer these questions for myself. I started researching. I started getting connected with academics and local organizations who were studying it. And I quickly found that no one knew, everyone was kind of making their best guess, but hyperscale developers are very secretive about what's going on in the data center, what the actual work is, and how much power and water they're using. So when I looked to see if there was information about all data centers online, companies were offering to sell it to me only $20,000 per year. So I was like, okay, I think we can do better than this. So yeah, we launched the map. It's a map that you can use right now. It's just for the United States, but you can use it to look anywhere in the United States and see what data centers are nearby. And we scraped the public internet to get all the data in one place. The data is free. You can pull it directly from the site. Also, the report is free and will be forever.
Yes, we'll link both resources below the video, obviously. So if you're interested in watching or looking at the map, then just pause the video and click the link below the video to access the map, which is a great tool. And as you mentioned, it's currently focused on the United States, but you offered to maybe build that out in terms of adding Europe or other parts of the world so that we can actually use it instead of building our own website, because you already did a great amount of effort to just have a starting point, and it's an amazing resource. Maybe to clarify, not everyone I think is aware of what a data center really is. So people know that there's internet hubs and stuff like that. Can you maybe just explain what the different types of data centers are? As I mentioned in the intro, there is a data center, but there's also a hyperscaler or a gigascaler. What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2025 in the US, 6 companies spent 2.5 trillion. They pledged it on data center projects. So what is all this ridiculous amount of money going towards? Well, it's going towards this next generation of data center, this AI hyperscale data center to be specific. And what a hyperscale data center means is it's using a relatively large amount of power. Now, traditional data centers were running all of the world's internet services, big tech ones included, we were actually able to have a reasonable power use from these. Like, for an example, in 2024, the total data center usage for all of Google across the earth and all of Microsoft across the earth was about 4 gigawatts for all of their data centers. Now, we have single data center developers building one hyperscale data center or even a gigascale data center that is using more power than the entire the Google's entire fleet of data centers or Microsoft's existing entire fleet of data centers. Meaning, at minimum, they're using the same amount of power as millions of homes. Now, why are they using so many powers? Well, there are these AI chips, which people, I mean, you would say they're the pinnacle of modern technology, right? These AI chips are capable of consuming huge amounts of data rather quickly. So we could talk about, like, for instance, just as an example, maybe all of the videos on a social media platform. We're talking about terabytes and terabytes of data. And so they use clusters of these graphic performance units and to process this information to train their models, which can then go ahead and do things like write out text or generate video or images. And so we're getting to the point now where a single AI server in one of these data centers will use the same amount of power as 1,000 homes. So this unit that's about the size of a fridge will use the same amount of power as 1,000 homes. So this is, this just goes to show you the amount of scale that's happening at these hyperscale data centers. And that once these things are built and people start using the AI, this is a continuous drain on the resources, not just power, but also the water, because they require tremendous amounts of water to cool these things. And we're not seeing the impacts yet, but we still have yet to build even bigger data centers, gigascalers, all the way up until 2030. So we're going to start feeling the effects pretty soon.
So in summary, you could say that they are not basically applying new ways of computing, new solutions. They are just taking a different approach to analyzing and modifying the data that's already there on a Facebook, on an Instagram, because they are now applying the AI capabilities to basically their entire data set, which then requires a way bigger amount of capacity to actually access or manipulate the data. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And as they taught me when I was learning predictive analytics, which is somewhat of a precursor to deep learning, they would always say garbage in, garbage out. So if you have garbage data, then you're going to have garbage results of your model. So right, it is a bit of data grab. And now there's a lot of attention on, for instance, what Sam Altman said is, hey, we're going to capture all the world's intelligence and rent it to you. I even saw this article today where this is, I think it's just speculation, but that AI data centers or operators are buying all sorts of books, scanning them with machines, and then discarding them. So they're basically consuming all the world's knowledge. And yes, so if they get a bunch of high quality knowledge, then their AIs are going to know about everything, and we're going to have to rent that information from them.
I also saw that article or that news post that there is a scanning machine that obviously cuts off the back of the book to actually be able to automatically like scan it through and then digitize it and then also afterwards destroy the book. I mean, it sounds crazy, and that's exactly why I think it's absolutely reasonable that they are doing this now to then, as Sam Altman said, sell it back to us. And I saw a video that I think it was on Truth Stream Media where they had locals speaking about the effects that data centers have besides obviously the power usage, which is crazy. They also talked about the noise levels, for example. I don't think there's a specific section on the report you published.
There is.
There is?
There's health effects, but please go on, and I'll add on.
Yeah, I went through it, but I haven't read the full report because I only received it recently and I was traveling. But where they talk to locals, that also besides the water, which we touch on in a minute, and the electricity, talked about the noise, because there is some kind of low volume noise, but it's constantly there. And in summer, it's even less critical than in winter, because in winter they start heating. And also they need to start up their generators in the morning using fuel. So all that, and that's a bigger section in the report, the facade of sustainability that everybody in the big tech world loves to hide behind, but it's the very opposite. Can you speak a little bit about the noise levels? And sorry for missing that section in the report.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's like you said, it's a lot of material, and there's a lot of information out there, and it's really exciting to see everyone aware and talking about it. And so I mean, the noise levels are coming from either the cooling systems or even these diesel or natural gas generators, where in the US, we can thank Trump's administration for this law, for this executive order under Big Beautiful Bill, where they gave people this bonus depreciation. So what that means is that, hey, if you build a data center and get it operational within 1 year, normally you would have to depreciate 20% of it or less every year off of your taxes. But he's basically given big tech an open door to deduct the entire cost of the data center off their taxes. Now, that might explain the economic incentive to build these things so fast. Because you are building them so fast, you can't build a power plant within a year. You have to use these natural gas or diesel generators to power it in the meantime. So there are reports now. There's in New Jersey, there's the Data One USA data center, which is one of the largest data centers on the East Coast. And residents around it filed a class action lawsuit. Here's a quote from there. It's like a very loud industrial noise. It sounds like a helicopter hovering, loud fans like you're at the airport. And so like, imagine if you're less than a mile from this thing and there's not much in between you. It's like it's right there at your house. There's also another case in the report where people live next to a Bitcoin crypto mine and they were going crazy. They couldn't sleep at night. Their pets, their dogs were tearing out their own fur. All the animals left the area. So it is a bit like, it's a bit like torture because you don't get to sleep. So God forbid one of these things lands right next to anyone watching this.
Yeah, that's exactly what the local in that report said, because it's the noise itself isn't that loud, but it's a constant thing. It's always there. And especially at night, obviously, when there's no cars around and just that green field in between him and the data center that was, I think, a mile or so away, or a bit under a mile. People were not able to sleep. So the only option is to actually leave your house, because you're not gonna get rid of that data center anytime soon. So it's really electricity, and then we have the noise levels, and then I think even more devastating part is the water usage. First of all, it uses amazing amounts of water, but then also I don't really understand why the water that is intended to be used for cooling comes out, it seems, in a polluted fashion. So the water is not reusable afterwards. It cannot be cleaned because it's full of toxins. Maybe we can talk about those two aspects first. Why does it need that much water? And why wouldn't you then just go and build it somewhere in the Arctic Circle instead of Utah, where it's hot? So you could build your data center somewhere else where it's already kind of a natural cool area like we did in the past. So you have a cool surrounding. So that seems crazy. And then why is the water polluted if it's just being used for cooling? If in a in a nuclear reactor, they can actually have a lake in front of it, and then the water comes out, has been used for cooling, but it's still not toxic. You can actually go and swim in that lake in the end.
If these data center companies and our government bodies responsible for regulating them, if they actually believed in the ideas of conservation, being green, net zero, then I would totally agree with you. Why on earth wouldn't they build them in water-rich areas? And for the U.S., that's like the Northwest or even the Southeast United States next to Louisiana and Florida. And no doubt there are data centers being built there, but primarily data centers are being built in water-starved areas. And it really makes no sense until you realize a lot of these water-starved areas have very healthy and independent energy grids. They're next to a lot of people, so they benefit from cheap power. And that's also extremely important to these data centers. Now, to answer about the water issue, well, let's go back to these AI chips. Again, this is like the pinnacle of modern technology. We could probably have an whole episode about how these chips are made. It's like science fiction. But so anyways, on this chip, they might have 200 billion transistors on them. So that's the AI chip. This thing at full load gets so hot, it's as hot as the surface of the sun or within 1 magnitude of that temperature. So something this hot, if it gets that hot, it's going to fail. So it constantly needs to be cooled down, and there's different technologies. These hyperscale data centers, no way are they using air cooling, which may not use any water, but it's going to use a lot of power. And I'll break that down a little bit more. But they're using something called direct-to-chip cooling, which means there's actually like a transfer block, a thermal transfer block right next to this AI chip, and water is pumped through there. The heat transfers into the chip, and it's cycled out. So what companies are saying now is, because a lot of people are waking up about the water issue, they're saying, hey, don't worry, it's a closed loop system. It only needs to be flushed out every few years. And the thing that they don't tell you, like you're pointing out, is the additives they'll add to this water. So that'll be things like propylene glycol, or even or LFOs, which are they're refrigerants. If you've ever used an air can or a keyboard cleaner and the can gets cold after you spray it, it's that type of stuff, which is, of course, very toxic for you and very hard to filter out of water. And so the problem they're going to find is they say, yeah, we'll filter it out, but they haven't done any safety studies. And in many cases, they are returning it to the water supply. Now, one of Meta's data centers, I'm blanking on where it was, but they recently found that the water they used to flush the cooling system somehow got contaminated with a rare and deadly bacteria. And I'll remember where this was, but they had to shut down 2 water recycling plants as they traced the origin of the bacteria, and they found that it was connected to Meta's cooling operation before they had even started, right? So Meta's using subcontractors. There's very little supervision on this stuff because they're coming in with so much money and using their leverage against poor towns and poor areas in the United States. They're given a free pass because they always like to say it's going to bring such an economic improvement to the land. They're really given a free pass when it comes to water and energy. And it's a very unsafe place to live around one of these things.
What are the most immediate direct effects that communities face where you have actually running data centers? Because I also, again, in that Truth Stream Media video, there were a few people speaking about it, but it's also part of your report.
Yeah, I mean, there's many health effects. We could talk about the one that's most obvious is the heat island effect. Now, this heat island effect is exactly what it sounds like. Like we talked about these chips being as hot as the surface of the sun. Where does that heat go? It gets blown straight into the atmosphere. That eventually raises the temperature of the ground. So they have seen that a hyperscale data center, this is an international study. They studied like 7,000 different data points across the world next to hyperscale data centers. And they found that after 2 months, the temperature would increase by 2 degrees Celsius. So imagine you have a cluster of these data centers, which is very common in the United States, that is going to accumulate on top of each other. And they saw a maximum increase in their study of 9 degrees Celsius, which is absolutely incredible, especially if you live in a place that's going through heat or wildfires. I mean, look at what's happening in France and Spain right now and how this is going to aggravate the situation. So the heat's a really big aspect of it.
So you're creating a microclimate, and then also, wasn't it the IPC that warned us about those 1.5 degrees to be sustainable?
Yeah, right. Like, what happened to global warming? Well, when it comes to the data centers, like, we're not even going to pay attention to this, even though it's very easy to verify. And I was going to say, yeah. So if you go to AI data center map, just to get the gears turning, I know it's not in your neighborhood, but go to the map, look for the black triangles on the map. If you see a cluster of them, there's many in the southwestern United States and Arizona. There's also many in Virginia on the middle east side of the United States. And if you click on an empty spot on the map, it'll actually calculate the heat island effect. And I do think I have it in Celsius and Fahrenheit. So you're welcome. And so yeah, so there are very massive temperature increases. So not only that, so like obviously there's a lot of health impacts from the heat going up in an already hot environment. But you have to look at these backup diesel generators as well, the natural gas turbines. So they did a study in Virginia, which is the most concentrated area of data centers on the planet right now. And they tracked it over 8 years, and they saw carbon monoxide triple and nitrous oxide and dangerous particulate matter double. In fact, it was worse than living next to a gas plant. So the data centers in Virginia, these diesel backup generators, they're just backup generators. They're not even running that much. They're running like 30 minutes a day at maximum. And so you have to think about if there was a grid emergency, which in Virginia, they're already saying, hey, we don't know how we're going to power this stuff by 2028. There's too much demand. Then these backup generators would have to run 24/7. And that would be a public health crisis on a massive scale. Now, this is not something that is just happening in Virginia. I also found this article about German data centers when they're experiencing the exact same thing, where the market is expected to grow from 3 gigawatts to over 6 gigawatts. So we're adding at least 3 million US homes worth of power. So it's doubling for y'all. It's around the same, right, as America, except in America, we're quadrupling. You guys are doubling by 2030. And what they're finding is that there's too much demand. There's too many people asking for power. So what they're reporting now is delays of almost 2 years for new industries that are requiring power. So they're having to wait 2 years. And this doesn't just bottleneck new data centers. This also bottlenecks power plants, because when you're adding these large power draws or even supplies to a power grid, you have to conduct studies. They have to be batched together. You have to make sure the grid is reliable. So it's actually slowing down development for the rest of the country at the expense of building these data centers, which is absolutely crazy. And Germany also might end up in a situation, well, a lot of these developers are going to ensure that their data center is running 24/7. You're going to use those same gas and diesel turbines. So yeah, as far as the health risk, the pollution, the air pollution can cause all sorts of things. They've been linked to fertility problems, stillbirths, strokes, dementia, diabetes, asthma, and it also compounds with that heat effect. So there's a lot of troubling things about the data centers.
And I think as I mentioned at the very beginning, we are on position 3 in comparison to other countries. US being first. I don't know the full amount. Last time I think I saw it was like 4,000 something data centers or even more. And there was like 2,500 or so in the UK, and then I think approximately 1,500 or so, or 2,000 in Germany. Nevertheless, it's huge, and it's way more than China has, which is interesting because they are actually running a technocracy, which then means that the impact should be also visible in Europe. But if you look at where and how these, like the electricity grids, the water supply, is set up in different US states and where these data centers are located, it's a very different story because we have a different infrastructure over here. First of all, electricity is running underground, then it's not that visible because we have more natural water access, maybe in comparison to other areas like Arizona or Utah, where it's dry anyway, and there's these lakes and rivers that basically feed into the larger like metropolitan areas as far as being the main supply. And if there's no rain or there's no refill, you're actually facing, and that's the case now. Shortages, there's rationing, people are not allowed to water their gardens or whatever they have. They recently had something similar in Munich because of the heat wave, where people were not allowed to use water as they wanted.
€50,000 fine.
Yes. Yes, and that's even without the data centers, but at some point, as you just pointed out, it will hit us here as well. So we need to be aware early on and be able to react and maybe use the map that you created as a resource. But two more questions that your report addresses. First of all, who is running the show? I mean, who is behind these data centers? Is it the usual suspects, or is there anyone that surprised you as far as the actors are concerned?
Well, no, it's the same club that we're all not in. It's the tech bros, of course. It's the 6 major tech companies of the United States that subscribe to the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, ironically, which it's just a grand inversion. They say they're going to protect people who are paying for your utility bills, and if they really mean the opposite. Yeah, so this is the first project you might have heard in mainstream news was Project Stargate, which was announced by Trump in collaboration with Sam Altman of OpenAI, Oracle, and so across Amazon, Google, Meta, and X, these are the main companies that are driving this data center development. But there's kind of been this chain reaction effect, which is very relevant to Europe too, is that everyone is jumping on this AI bubble. So independent developers are like, oh, I'm going to build a data center too, even though they don't have anyone to lease it. So a lot of independent hyperscalers have also popped up, like Fermi America, which is named after President Trump, actually. It's one of the names that's in the panhandle of Texas, and that data center was supposed to be the biggest one on the planet, but they're having trouble finding one customer to rent out the space there. So that's, just goes to show you how big of a bubble this is. And essentially it's the big tech bros, but then you also have the EU doing things like coming up with digital sovereignty, which is, that is actually, I think it's a co-option of a term that is important, where yes, there many more countries, more European countries are recognizing that there is too much dependence on American big tech, and so they're trying to create their own branch. They call this a sovereign hyperscaler as part of digital sovereignty, ensuring that governments own their own technology infrastructure and are not reliant on Microsoft and the rest of it. So,
let's see. I just pointed that out in recent interviews as well, because the EU is now talking about more independence from NATO, from the US, where there is obviously a narrative in the works where they talk about they need their own AI, they need their own army, the EU army, which I consider kind of the final building block to accomplishing the so-called Fourth Reich. Because if you took the currencies away, you took national sovereignties and laws away, and if you take the last piece, which is the nation-state army, there's not even a way to get out of that block state at some point. So that's the narrative, and that feeds into that narrative perfectly, and underlines that.
Exactly. They have lots of plans to build their own flavor of data centers, right? No yucky American data centers, even though they overbuilt, and China's got plenty of capacity too. 80% of China's data centers are idle and empty. No one's renting them. But hey, no, let's go ahead and overbuild in Europe too. So, and luckily I do see with Europe, at least they're not going to the countryside. It mostly is concentrated into big cities, big internet hubs like Frankfurt, Dublin, Amsterdam, things like that. But, this this map, which I hope can be replicated if someone wants to take the torch, or maybe I will give it the ability to open up to other countries. It's just a little hard. I have to figure out which country I want to do first, or do them all at the same time. It's really worth it to start to track down the resources in Germany and in Europe right now. Where are these data centers? Because you're not gonna find out about it in the public news until there are literally hundreds of these things being built, and by then it's too late, right? So you need to know about them ahead of time. The report has an entire section dedicated to trying to scope these things out in local government, because the way it works is that these tech companies, which it would be the European tech companies, I guess, or probably American tech companies, they will close you up with the local officials. They'll wine them, they'll dine them, and then they'll ensure they'll have the most leverage and the most benefits as they can get. Like, for example, there's places in the US where Meta has 100% sales tax, and many sales tax abatement, which means they don't have to pay sales tax on billions of dollars of projects. There's also a section in the report that shows how much states are giving up. They're giving away, Texas has given away $1 billion in total to data center tax abatements. Many other states are following suit. So this is the time to get informed about your country's laws. What are your country's laws on tax abatements? How does that happen? What's the process like? Does it happen on the county level? Are you paying attention to those county documents? Because trust me, they're not going to advertise to you when they're building a data center. You have to go and be very vigilant when that pops up.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I wanted to have that conversation today based on the report, because again, you pulled up a few articles, but in the often not so independent media over here, there's literally no one talking about that topic right now. And the situation in the US, because everybody's focused on some other stuff, on the narratives and the daily news. So it's good to be ahead of the curve and to actually take action now, as you said, before shit hits the fan, so that we do have some option to influence the agenda on a local level, where that is going to have the direct impact as far as water and electricity supplies are concerned. So we touched on the players as the usual suspects. I also mentioned, the finance bubble, the AI finance bubble is a circle jerk where everybody finances someone else, which I also wrote about in the past, so we don't have to necessarily touch on that. But then the last question maybe that in regards to the report, what is that capacity actually being used for? I mean, as you said, there is a huge amount of capacity that is not even being used. People are not able to rent that out or lease that to someone. So what is it's not going to be to make our life more convenient, I guess. And it's not going to be to make ChatGPT a bit more intelligent, or be able to create more realistic Donald Trump videos, or I don't know, cat porn, whatever people create these days, or your own cartoon. So looking at it's maybe guessing or speculation to some extent, but we do see that, especially in the US with flock cameras and ring cameras and all that other stuff, there is a police state being built up that we haven't seen in history so far, spearheaded by Palantir and the big tech bros, and obviously in bed with governments who are appreciative of these new tools. But what is the learning as far as your guess as to what that is going to be used for? Is it the Terminator, or is it the more convenient ChatGPT in the future? Because remember, I think I just saw that recently, Sarah Connor in Terminator was arrested and put into a mental asylum because I think she sabotaged data centers. So interesting how that goes.
That's super relevant, because right now data center activists are being labeled as extremists, violent extremists. So
terrorism.
Terrorism, right? And so I think that does say a lot about where these data centers are going, and this is speculation, but that the end game to all of this is military infrastructure, And I do know the U.S. military recently opened up. It hasn't have an open contract, have an open way of working where they can rent out AI data center compute from any of these cloud providers. Oh, isn't that convenient? Well, now they have all this compute open to them. So as this bubble bursts, which you're absolutely right, there's no way on earth that consumers could use all of this compute. I mean, we're going from about 50 gigawatts or about 50 million homes worth of AI compute in the US to over 200 from all of the data centers that are planned. So that's about 40% of all of the US's power demand, the current power demand. So could AI use 40% of the US's power? I don't think so. I mean, at least it's not individuals using it. And the report kind of looks into China, which China is a very good example of this. They are the second largest AI and data center market in the world, and they're having trouble filling out 80% of their data centers. This was something published by MIT, so take it with a grain of salt. But a lot of Chinese data centers are sitting idle because people have migrated to local AI. People aren't really renting as much AI as they would have expected. So I do expect the same thing here. And what I see is that these are positioned as a bit of a national security tool. AI is likened to a nuclear weapon or a very powerful weapon that the U.S. needs to build its capability of. And that's what you see people like Kevin O'Leary, who's a Canadian building large data centers in the U.S. or Canada, or Dario Amodei, the CEO of Claude Anthropic, which is one of the most popular AI companies in the world. What they're both saying is that we need to build these things because China is only 6 months behind us, 7 months behind us, 8 months behind us, however far. They're treating this like an AI war, and it might even pop out with an eventual cyber attack. So that is how they're positioning it. That may be the reason why they're building so many, but it's not in our interest. So why are we the ones fitting the bill? It's our power bills, it's our utility bills that are going to go up. It's our cities and homes that are going to be polluted and be made hard to live on. Why should we be supporting these data centers and be paying taxes while they get complete tax breaks? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Absolutely. And when it was first on the news, there was this that there is this DeepSeek Chinese AI, which then even at that point was announced to be better than the ChatGPTs of the world. I knew that this is gonna be the point where they make it an arms race. It's not about the question, do we need, and that's the actual question that we need to ask. Do we need AI really, and for what purpose? What does it do to society? What does it do to our brains? To what's the psychological effect if we consider that the smartphone has cost us like half of the brain capacity in about 15 years? So it's not going to get better with AI, I suppose. And when this DeepSeek narrative popped up, I knew that this is going to be, and I mentioned that in interviews. This is going to be the narrative. It can't be the Chinese or the Russians having the best AI. We need to make it an arms race so that we win. Winning. That's as usual.
Winning,
yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yes, the billionaires and technocrats win, and we support them. We support them through our consent, through our silence, and which is why I celebrate you, Tom, for bringing this issue. I actually have a lot of hope for Europe because one, there's not that many data centers being built, which is a good thing. But for the most part, I do see Europeans as ecological aware and conscious about these issues, whereas Americans are a little bit more slow and stubborn to get to it. There are pockets, but still, I think you guys could potentially beat out this issue, and that gives me a lot of hope because I love Europe. I love traveling around. There's so much beautiful land. It needs to be protected from these crazy people before it's too late.
Absolutely. Yeah, most likely they are tired of all that winning in the US. But
tired, yeah.
I do think on the other side, on a positive note, first of all, I think Royet from Geopolitics and Empire shared several articles about data centers that cannot be built because they didn't get the funding, something didn't work, then there was local objections to it, and so on. So it's not going all all that well in every area, but it's the number. It's the sheer number of it that make these individual wins a bit less important than they really are, because it's really important that people win locally. And on the other hand, there is a growing opposition, and it's way more active in the US because they are maybe more aware now that there is a license plate reader. But then on the other hand, it's co-opted, as the Tea Party co-opted the Occupy Wall Street at the time and made it a political thing. Now you have this data center topic being on mainstream media, which is also kind of a risk that it's co-opted by or like actors that want to make it a political issue. We will be taking care of it. You get a vote for a different person, and then it's all going to be fine. So that's not the way to go. Please go ahead and have these local protests organized locally, and make sure you're not being led by some kind of political guy who wants to be in front of that parade now, if he wasn't there for the last problems that you had to solve on your own.
Spot on. I just want to add to that. Yeah, I mean, I think we both encourage people stepping up and being a leader in their own community. Like Tom said, like, no one's speaking about this now. So this is for everyone watching this. If you have connections, you like to speak, please use the report. Oh, also, this is a request I have of anyone who's watching this. If anyone wants to help us translate it into German, please let us know. We'd love to get a copy out in German language or any other language as well. I think there is a gentleman who is bravely taking on the task of translating it to French. So let's get it out there and learn from it, and then teach others in your area, and we can really start the grassroots effort.
I might even help with that translation piece if I get a editable version, as we now talk about it. Haven't really touched on this before, but we'll speak about that after.
That would be a great help, Tom. Thank you.
That should be doable. Now I had one more question that I know I wanted to add one point, because no, it's a question. There is this development of robots also. You have Boston Dynamics. They were on the news a few years ago already with their nice, funny dancing robots, with wheels. The other guy looked more like a Terminator, actually. And then there's this funny thing. Obviously, it was a fun video with music. But now you see UB3 and the Chinese models, where even our chancellor here in Germany flew over to a presentation that UB3 made, where you have these like smaller scale robots, but they are actually kind of making karate moves now, and it looks way more like I'm not quite sure if it's actually the computer, managing that robot, or if there's some guy behind the curtain that's still a human.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, yeah, or that one. But nevertheless, I do think that there is a relation to a narrative that's growing. For older people, we need to have robots in those in hospitals and to take care of elderly people and so on. I mean, service personnel at airports and blah blah. So there's a ton of robots being rolled out at some point, once they are really like cheap enough and maybe mass produced. And UB3 does have that goal. They outlined that they are ramping up production. Do you see that in relation to the like AI data centers, or is that going to be something that they handle individually as the product, like the producers, like let's call it UB3, or let's take this Elon Musk robot, what is it, Optimus? If they are rolling that out, obviously they have XAI data centers, so that's going to be covered there. But is there a relation? Do you see a relation there?
Yeah, so robotics does require a lot of AI compute, but not where you might expect. It's again in the training phase, right? So what's happening right now in China, and also in actually everywhere in the world right now, there's this whole industry of providing training data for these robots. So there's these companies, I'm blanking on the names right now, but they essentially pay you to record yourself doing chores. And in China, there are factories of people who have kind of like game sticks that can control a robot, and they're practicing folding clothes, putting away, washing dishes, that kind of thing. So right now we're in this data gathering phase for robotics as well. I will say, when this is done, when they've been trained enough and they're good enough at their tasks, we won't need people anymore to train them. So again, it's like I don't think people realize what they're doing, but they're putting themselves out of work. And then also AI data centers won't be needed if there's nothing for the robots to learn. So yeah, I mean, you do need AI compute up front, but you don't need this much, and you won't need it ongoing because most of the processing is done on an AI chip that's actually in the robot itself, that's listening to the cameras and can react far quicker than connecting to an AI server and coming back.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, there's a million things and details we could talk about, but I don't want to hold you up that long because you obviously have a ton of other stuff to do because you're not only do you have the above phone and the company and you are actually creating great products, but you're also one of the most active activists in that space, which I think is a very important factor of what you are doing, because you're not a business person that is just with just the goal of selling as much, like products. It's really about something ethical and conquering a space that has been taken away from us. That's why also I forgot, I think in the intro, to mention your blog, Take Back Our Tech, where there's a ton of helpful videos and podcasts that you do on different topics where you can navigate the world and make tech a tool that actually supports your endeavors instead of being the product of big tech technology that has hijacked our digital space that was supposed to be a free space that we control. And we need to, like, as you said, take back our tech. So not to drain on all the details, but is there any last words on the report? Anything I forgot to ask that was important?
No, I just want to thank you, Tom, for seeing that. And I would just say that, so like our individual day-to-day actions are supporting these data centers, whether we know it or not. That's where our the private phones, the private laptops come in, because they're not actually connected to AI layers, which are running on these data centers. So you can watch this interview and say that, I don't want any part of AI data centers, but when your phone is actually using it by default, then that's something you should look at and question. And so, yes, Tom and I have worked closely in bringing more above phones to Germany. These are de-Googled privacy phones. We also do privacy laptops, so check those out at abovephone.com. And these don't have any AI on them. They don't make any connections to AI that a normal phone or laptop would. And in fact, you can run local AI that would work without any internet at all. So if you do have a need for AI, you can replace it. So that's great. And if you do want any information or you want to stay on top of this issue, please follow our Substack too. That is tbot.substack.com.
Maybe add-on question to the AI. You mentioned that you are building one that is supposed to be locally without internet connection. Can you quickly elaborate on how that's going to work if somebody is interested in using it as a tool? Because obviously that could be helpful to some people who need it for repeating, or who basically use it for repeating things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give people the solution right now. There's apps that you can use, like there's a LM Studio. You should be able to download it for whichever computer you're using right now. And you can use open source democratized models on the internet. So even these big tech companies, they do a good thing once in a while and they release their model out. Now, it might not be fully open source. You don't exactly know how they trained it, but you can get the file onto your computer and you can start asking it questions, and it's not dependent on an external server. All the processing happens right there on your computer. So in a few hours, you can replace all of your AI needs. It's not going to be as fast or as good or able to search the internet as the cloud AI, but you can do quite a lot with it. And we are going to keep trying to innovate our products so they work better with these local AI models.
And your, like, the goal of replacing big tech with all the products you release, I can, from my own testimony, confirm that it works, because since I received your phone and also use the laptop, I actually don't do anything on big tech, and I don't need any services or paid services. And that's maybe as a closing remark to the people. First of all, thank you, Hakeem, for taking time, providing that amazing body of work as far as the report is concerned. Let's discuss the the translation. And to everybody who's watching the video, stop financing and using the system that's going to kill you at some point. So do something that makes sense and that's far away from ChatGPT, XAI, and all that other crap. Anthropic.
My pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much.